Welcome back, dear viewers, after a 6 weeks long break. Today, we'll delve into the recent unveiling of a Taiwanese submarine and assess the risk of Chinese infiltration. We'll also dissect the recent Taipei Aerospace Defense Technology exhibition, exposing issues related to its offset program and corruption. Discover the perceptions of foreigners and Correspondents Club journalists on Taiwan's defense. Also question the dedication of Taiwanese citizens to safeguarding their nation. Should civilians engage in military conflicts? And what about the post-election stance of the KMT? Would this party sell Taiwan out? We'll also analyze the broader regional security dynamics in Asia, the Philippines' role in the Bashi Channel. Also, Blackwater's mission in Taiwan 2 decades ago, and unravel the mysterious Iranian connection. Get ready for an in-depth exploration of Taiwan's vital defense and security concerns.
Hi everyone, today we have a guest for the second time. It's Wendell Minnick. He's a well-known military journalist. Wen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, it was fun to be here.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, if you're talking about the origins of my profession, started out as a young man, child almost, and watching Vietnam very closely as a kid, and then becoming interested in warfare. Later in life, I wrote a book on spies history in 1992 called Spies and Provocateurs, and I got interested later in Asia, so I came to Asia and worked for Jane's Defense Weekly for 6 years. Then I was the Asia Bureau Chief for Defense News for 10, and then I worked for other publications on defense matters here in Asia. Currently I have a Substack, China in Arms, where I sort of, my retirement project is to just write anything I want, no matter the cost.
Good. Let's start with an issue that has been in the media recently, the Taiwanese submarines.
Well, this goes back to 2001 when the U.S. government released an arms package that included the assistance to help Taiwan build or acquire submarines. Unfortunately, the United States does not build diesel-electric submarines. So it became a real problem. So finally the Taiwanese gave up on the Americans and began building their own about 5 years ago. And the most current one that was released is the prototype. It has all kinds of welding issues. We noticed it right away. They say it'll be an operational combat for the Bashi Channel. I seriously doubt that. Prototypes are never used in combat. They're used for testing, and then the second one is a second build, and that's also used for testing, and then the third one is operational for combat.
So that would take still a few years, right?
I would say yes, at least 5. Yes, minimum.
What do you think about how far did maybe the Chinese military or intelligence penetrate them? I mean, Taiwan is quite well penetrated by the Chinese. What do you think about the security of those subs?
Well, one of the admirals mentioned during the interview for the prototype at the ceremony that the Chinese did attempt to steal information, and it was stopped. I don't know what they're talking about exactly, but I will tell you this. The Taiwan company that built the propellers, which are very sensitive items, particularly that's what you listen to under sonar is the propellers, and they have a certain sound, and you can identify the submarine by the propeller. Anyway, the Taiwan the Taiwan company that builds the propellers has an office in China that makes propellers too, factory. So we're not sure if that's the angle he's referring to or not, but yeah. There's huge problems with the submarine, with the prototype. I wish they hadn't pushed the idea that it was going to be operational for combat. It's very dangerous to put men aboard that thing for combat. Bashi is going to be a very shallow area. It's going to be a very crowded area during a war. The Americans Navy, they really don't. The American Navy does not want more submarines in the water. It's a very congested underwater environment already. Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Singapore, everyone seems to have submarines now in the area. So, U.S. Navy doesn't want more submarines.
Okay, good. So that's an interesting topic. Let's talk about the recent military or arms trade show we had here, and you visited. What about the TADTE, right?
Well, every 2 years, except for COVID, they've had the Taipei Aerospace Defense Technology Expo. And it's normally been a bit of a lemonade stand compared to other international shows I've visited. This year was the biggest, primarily because the U.S. Congress released billions of dollars to Taiwan to buy weapons. So it was quite shocking how many foreign companies showed up for this one. So most of the platforms, aircraft I'll call them, were under unmanned aerial vehicles that Taiwan was producing. There were foreign companies trying to sell theirs as well. That's the future, unmanned aerial vehicles, something that can project force further out without causing any feedback from the other side, like cruise missiles. Taiwan's moving forward on cruise missiles, and we hope that they have the capability of reaching deeper into China.
Okay, any other updates? Anything else interesting?
There was a lot of folks there, new folks from the U.S. that don't understand how it works here. It works the same in every country. We have an offset program here, and that means a certain percentage of whatever you sell to Taiwan has to be built here.
Yes, yes. So
that's an offset, and that can be very sticky, particularly in the terms of corruption. That's where the corruption comes from. So someone in the government will get their aunt or friend or somebody to get that piece of the contract, and that money goes back to that other person. So you look for offsets for corruption. And it hasn't gone away just because Taiwan's a democracy. It's still got some serious issues.
Okay, good. Thank you. The next topic would be, what about the foreigners here who live here, who have their opinions about Taiwan, both experts and journalists? What do you think about this crowd?
Well, since COVID and China's crackdown on journalists in China and Hong Kong, we've had a flood of journalists coming here to live and work. 5 years ago, the Foreign Correspondents Club had a happy hour once a month. It might have been 10 people. Half of them were not even journalists. So now they have about 100, 150 people show up at these happy hours. The problem is that like the Foreign Correspondents Club and other foreigners who are here from the United States and Europe, particularly the United States and Canada, they feel that they have to pick a side, and many of them, or all of them, seem to have picked the DPP. So they've slanted their news coverage in favor of the DPP in many ways, ignoring the KMT reality, which is that the KMT might get back into power someday, or if China takes over Taiwan economically through an economic blockade or some sort of military force, the KMT most likely will be chosen as a surrogate government to rule over Taiwan under China's control.
So what about those journalists who came from China? Like, is it mostly them who constitute the new arrivals, and how is their attitude? Like, do they take it out on China now? Do they want to take revenge for what they survived in China? How is their attitude, and who did they pick?
Well, most of them are to the left, but the more impressive publications, I won't call them impressive, let's call them legacy publications, who saw Beijing as a Pulitzer. If you weren't based in Beijing, you couldn't get a Pulitzer. So getting kicked out of China is a problem for them because they expected that at some point in their career to get a Pulitzer, return to the United States, write the book, do the book tour, become famous, and that's not happening now. So they all come here because they can't go to Hong Kong, and they can use their Mandarin skills here, but there's not a lot of news here. So they sort of talk about going back to China. They act like the doors will all swing back open and they'll be going back any day now.
But it doesn't look like they could write about the law in China either, because they were just not allowed. So in the end, it might be better or easier for them to do it here, even write about China from Taiwan.
You're absolutely right. The problem is that being there is part of the package.
Oh, okay.
You know, a byline that says that you're in Beijing or Shanghai is far more important than Taipei.
Liking and subscribing is greatly appreciated, and it helps me keep this channel going. My goal is to spread the opinions and experience of the best people in this industry.
Yeah, agree, totally. Yeah, last time the thing that really was so surprising to me during our last interview, when you talked about the attitude of Taiwanese regarding defending the country, the island, you said they lack any commitment. Now it seems it has changed a little bit because we have a lot of these courses, BB guns and tactics and first aid. So both attended by males and females. There were long lines to sign up to attend. Do you think there is a change? Is there anything better, or is it still like the exercises around Taiwan and no one cares, just goes to work?
You're talking about this, we call it soft power, or this is training.
Yes.
Yeah, software or hardware. Hardware is equipment. Yes, they have a lot of these new medical and emergency preparedness courses you can take. There are a lot of these, we'll call it LARPing, live action role play, where they get these plastic BB gun style, and they run around the woods and they wear camo. And I don't think that's going to prepare the military per se. The military has its own training facilities.
No, I'm talking about civilians.
Civilians shouldn't handle weapons, not on the street, because if you have the army, let's say, fighting on the ground in Taipei against the PLA, special forces that might land here, having someone shoot in a certain direction confuses both sides. And if they catch a civilian with a weapon, normally that's a problem for the family too. So the Chinese are very good at controlling that problem in China. They punish the entire family. And we've seen this in the United States as well. The Chinese students who go to the United States for study, or they move there to work for some big technology company, they often get phone calls saying, could you help us? Your motherland. It's called the motherland strategy. And they say, well, I really can't. And I said, well, gee, I'm sorry to hear that. Your mother, her cancer treatment is no longer available. So they're very good at bending your arm.
Yeah, but I would still argue a little bit. I think it does make a little bit sense, at least if the women know, first aid, if the guys know how to handle a gun, at least move in an urban area. I think it might be helpful.
Urban combat is very complex. You have snipers. You have choke points. These are places where they're going to try to control these areas. The movement around the city is going to be very difficult, particularly Taipei. I don't recommend anyone pick up a gun unless they're defending themselves, but there just are not a lot of guns in the army itself.
Yeah.
They still are trying to make enough T91 rifles for everybody. And when they have a military exercise, it's not unusual for the old T65s to be handed over from one brigade to another to use for the military exercise. So they don't even have enough rifles for their infantry.
We talked about the KMT. You said they might subvert Taiwan. What about this idea some people talk about KMT might sell out the island. I consider this a bit problematic because Mine Joe already tried it, and people took to the streets. So this might happen again. People actually know it works. So I wouldn't be that worried about KMT. There is kind of control now. People would be suspicious about a KMT-run government.
Well, it depends on how that's done. Is it done by the end of a gun? With the Chinese Communist Party sending the PLA here and basically saying this is the way things are. There are folks here in Taiwan who have told me that a Chinese takeover of the island would simply be a change in management. They have this very business-like attitude towards it. As long as they make money, they don't seem to care. And that's a real problem. Now, we have a lot of folks here that are journalists and other types that are getting involved in DPP political issues, and they should not do that. This is not their country. They weren't born here. They're pushing the woke agenda, perhaps. If you notice that they slant their writing in a certain way.
Yes.
And they can get on an airplane when it gets bad.
And they probably will.
And they will, and they'll leave the people that believed in their propaganda here to suffer. So that's really not objective journalism.
Another topic I still wanted to ask you about, from my other interviews, I know that that the southern border is open in the U.S. There is a lot of course, there is an immigration, but there is also a lot of young military-aged men, Chinese men, pouring into the U.S. Maybe agents, maybe sleepers. What's your take on that?
Well, down south, I don't think it's a problem with the Chinese intelligence service. They fly into the United States on fake student visas all the time, and then they disappear.
Okay.
So we've seen a lot of that, where students just vanish. And are they sleeper agents? That's sort of an old movie, spy trope, where the sleeper agent gets a phone call and someone or the other and sings a song or says a poem, and now he's activated to blow up a bridge or kill somebody, whatever. They certainly could have people on the ground here. I would be more worried about what we call fifth column here in Taiwan, where they actually do have special operations people, Chinese operation people here on the island. And they have, over the years, found stockpiles of rifles and guns and empty condos, empty apartment buildings in the south, Kaohsiung and Taichung.
Kind of like the recent lab in California, right, with those bacteria and infections and COVID tests a few months ago.
Yeah. Well, they're finding, but they're finding rifles and these are military grade, and we don't know who put them there. We don't know how they got in there, and then you don't read about it again. So,
yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I haven't heard of that.
Oh yeah, I've read stories about them finding them, and then it's too many really for the mafia really to transport. So I'm wondering if they're being pre-positioned for a future attack. That's a very common tactic. They did that in Wei during the TADTE offensive, pre-positioned weapons.
Good. One more topic would be the regional security situation, which seems to be improving, like different countries, China's neighbors cooperating, exercising, exchanging weapons, delivering boats to each other or ships. So what's your idea of this hub and spoke theory, where the spokes cooperate more together than not only with the hub, but also the spokes among each other?
Well, if you're talking about China's cooperation with other countries...
No, I mean rather the neighbors cooperating, like China, Japan, maybe Philippines, US, Indonesia, the countries that are being threatened by China.
Well, we have to look at we have to wind the clock back a little bit to Vietnam. We left in 75. We left Cambodia in 75, Laos. We closed our bases in Thailand in 77. We closed Taiwan in 79. We closed our Philippine bases in 89, 90. Okay, so we have abandoned the Southeast Asian area, and that vacuum has been filled full of Chinese military and political influence. And it's not a surprise that the Philippines took so much money, the legislators. So it's very difficult to say which way the Philippines will go in the future. They will go the way of the money, and even though the Marcos family is in charge in Manila, in the past the Chinese have been heavily involved in the legislative committees.
Yes,
there.
but I think there is like maybe a protection would be that the military has been for decades being educated and trained in the U.S. Wouldn't be kind of like a safety feature that maybe they're not so inclined to cooperate with China?
Well, yeah, the old days, they do miss the old days when we had two big bases there, and there was a certain history with the United States, and Duarte made all kinds of problems. He cooperated closely with China, and we don't know what's going to happen down there in the future. We're going to put a cruise missile base in the Philippines to close off the Bashi Channel between Taiwan and the Philippines. How long that'll be operational, we don't know. Most of the aircraft, most of the Chinese aircraft that flew down through there during Ghost Month, they didn't fly through the northern area near Okinawa. It was all down through the Bashi Channel between the Philippines and Taiwan and the ships. So the Chinese are sending these things that demonstrate that they can try to secure the Bashi Channel. And that's their avenue into the Pacific. They have to control that plus the Taiwan island itself.
So how serious is now the U.S. response? Because they have those 4 new bases they gained access to. Is this of any significance, or?
Well, the problem is that when you build a cruise missile base in the Philippines, it can simply be attacked by the Chinese. The Chinese have got incredible modern military capabilities. I've been to China's defense expos, and they got everything they need to take anything they want. So it's kinetic warfare. They have an air defense capability where they can shoot down anything over Taiwan. That's new. I mean, they can just shoot down any aircraft flying over Taiwan. That's a projection of force from land-based air defense systems in China. It's amazing. So we have a real problem.
Also, they know Western weaponry really well. They've been stealing, they've been studying,
Right. Yeah, they do that. They've been accused of stealing and retrofitting these things and learning from them, but they also work because that's why they give them the Iranians, that's why they give them the other countries to see how they operate in other environments. When I go to defense shows anywhere in the world, particularly China or whatever, they love to show off their weapons and video of them being used in warfare. That way they can sell the weapon even more. Japan is about the only strategic one we can trust to participate in any sort of conflict with China. Philippines is iffy. It would be the U.S. military in the Philippines that responds, not the Philippine military. They barely have an air force, barely. And the Japanese haven't been real active in Taiwan. I haven't met any Taiwan advisors or from Japan. They're not here, or at least I haven't seen them. But I've met a lot of American special operations people here. You can tell they're not English teachers. I mean, they look like linebackers walking around with haircuts. You can see them in Kaohsiung particularly. They're down there hanging out in a bar called...
The way you can ease tensions and help peace in Asia is by liking this video.
Okay, so let's talk about Blackwater, right? Yeah.
Well, when Chen Shui-bian was shot, there was a demand for better security for the president. The Secret Service of the United States, for example. They needed it right away. And U.S. government foreign military sales programs take too long. So Blackwater came in and secured the contract for the training the Taiwan president's security. And that's the National Security Bureau. So when they came, the Blackwater people contacted me, and I thought there'd be a great opportunity to write a story about them and learn about how they operate. So for about 3 or 4 years, I interacted with them quite a bit, and actually I did make introductions and vice versa. So it was an unusual relationship, but I in no way ever worked for Blackwater. People have accused me of conflict of interest because I'm a journalist, but I also you have to get involved a little bit to find out what's going on. You have to gain people's trust, and yeah, I was probably out drinking with them almost every night for about a year.
So in the end, professionally, what did you gain from it? What's your...
I learned how they operate outside the U.S. government control.
Okay.
I learned how professional they were, despite the criticism of them. They do get things done very quickly. They don't need lawyers. They don't need. They just hire the best people they can, and they go to work. And you know, I've still got a lot of friends in Blackwater, but I don't judge them as being hypocrites. They're not hypocrites. They're solid, professional soldiers.
Yeah, that's also my impression after listening to Eric Prince's interview, which is fantastic, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I never met Eric, but I certainly, his people I worked with, and they all had nothing but praise for him.
Yeah, obviously.
You know, anyone could pick up the phone and call him, and he could help them. He was a solid leader. You don't see that in most companies.
Yeah, that was shocking when during the Obama administration, what we saw in the media, and then I heard his interview with Stéphane Molyneux, and then with the Ryan Sean podcast.
Right.
I mean, that's just totally the opposite person that we know from the media.
Well, yeah, during that Ryan interview, he mentioned the CIA contracts, the non-official cover contracts in Germany. The U.S. Could not get the Germans to extradite Islamic terrorists to the United States who had killed Americans. And Blackwater got the contract and went in there and killed them in Germany, which is a U.S. ally. So, yeah, if you give Blackwater a contract, they're going to take care of it. Now, they received a lot of criticism by the so-called massacre. Maybe it was a massacre. But the point is that the U.S. government is not prepared to do those jobs because of lawyers and human rights. And if you can't do those kinds of jobs, then get out of the war-making business.
Good. One final topic. So, what are the current stories you're working on? What's going on here in this region? What's interesting? What do you want our listeners to leave with? What should they be watching for in the coming months?
Well, in China and Arms, I have been seeking out folks that know anything about the Iranian activities here, and I've been doing that for about a month before the Hamas incident. So I've gathered a lot of data on companies here in Taiwan that do business with Iran, technology companies. I've found 3 of them so far. So I am trying to piece those together as a longer story for China in Arms. And I did one on North Korea many years ago called Unicorn, where I found a North Korean office here. So that's what I like to do. I like to do investigative journalism. I like to drill down, and I like to find out what people are lying about.
So when would you have your Iran-Taiwan story?
Well, I'm still working on it. The past 2 days, I visited the locations of these companies and photographed the outside of the buildings. You always photograph the buildings and the plates for the address, and then you go on the internet, find their websites, you find out who's sponsoring the websites, where they're located. A lot of them are not sponsored in Taiwan, they're sponsored in some other country. Front companies, for example, will use the same fax number. So if you have 3 companies using the same fax number, there's something very strange going on, particularly if it's a restaurant, a technology company, and something else. That there's something seriously wrong. The problem with doing a story about the Iranians here in Taiwan is that sometimes the Taiwanese companies don't really think of it as illegal or immoral or unethical or whatever to deal with Iran. Most Asian countries
Yeah.
do not see the American perspective. So if you go anywhere else in Asia, they don't care about doing business with the Iranians. So the problem for Taiwan is that how close do they want the Americans to get? And the Americans will say, we want these people out, we want them under arrest, and the Taiwanese don't know what to do about it. So it's a dangerous thing to do for me as well, to knock on a door and a bit of a surprise.
Also, the conflict now in Hamas-Israel is just very fresh, but there have been already few indications about the possible cooperation between Xi and Assad in Syria. Who knows, maybe Hamas. So this doesn't bode well then for a possible Taiwanese-Iranian cooperation if Iran is too close to China or maybe some Arabic countries.
I don't think Taiwan's that smart. Taiwan doesn't do that kind of conspiracy stuff.
No, I mean, that's not good if those companies have access to those here, or
Right.
maybe any cooperation. I'm not saying
Right,
purposefully,
agreed.
just by coincidence,
Right. Well, the main reason that Iran and North Korea come here so much is because the computer industry.
Yeah.
And I've found Iranian and North Korean very interesting, what they're buying. So you have to look out for that sort of thing. But I've also found Israeli companies here doing very strange things who have 2 or 3 front companies. So yes, everyone is wanting access to very sensitive information and equipment here in Taiwan. Taiwan is the best place to buy some of this stuff.
Where can people find you online? Where should we send them?
Well, Substack, China in Arms. It has a free, there's free, but if you want to get paid and read some really cool stuff, it's only $5 a month. So
Good. Thank you very much, Wen, for your time.
cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.